Well, the Diddy baby oil question hasn't quite been answered yet as to why there's 1,000 bottles of baby oil, but there may be an answer as to, well, why there's all this baby oil in general. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney and a former prosecutor. Eric, we've learned in a new lawsuit this week allegations of the baby oil being brought up, not the 1,000 bottles of it, but baby oil in general, and allegations that Diddy was drugging the baby oil with something like GHB or something of that nature. What's your reaction to this one? I don't know that I saw this one coming.
Yeah, this is a bit of a head scratcher, but this case has had a number of curveballs, so nothing's surprising me at this point. There are certainly allegations that Diddy engaged in drugging victims, incapacitating them, overcoming their will. This method is something new. I guess I'm a little bit curious as to how someone would have ingested this and got it into their system. But yeah, pretty curious allegations here.
I don't know if it's like a topical. I mean, essentially, I mean, I know you can, if you go to like the marijuana store or even like just Whole Foods and get CBD, you can get oils that have CBD or THC and things like that in them. So I'm assuming it's kind of the same sort of principle. I have no idea how that would work when applied in a topical way, but I guess maybe it is a thing. Um, how do you go about proving an allegation like this without the actual bottle of baby oil that was used that very night? It seems it's just an allegation right now.
Yeah, I think number one is you got to get an expert to prove that it's possible. So you've got to get some kind of scientist, perhaps like a biochemist or something like that, who can testify that, hey, this is how you could put drugs in baby oil and put it on someone's skin and incapacitate them. And then you've got to prove that Diddy had the opportunity to do this. He had all of the supplies. And then lastly, if you can get a witness or video evidence or something corroborating this opportunity to do this and that Diddy did do that, that's one way to go about it.
I mean, could this just be? I mean, is this just someone a victim connecting the dots as to why they became so intoxicated so quickly? And I mean, and this is how the conclusion they're coming to. Uh, Typically, what we've heard in the past has been there were certain drinks over here for these people and certain drinks over here for these people, and of the drinks being drugged in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to find it interesting if we hear from more people if they start to suspect the same thing, or if there's a different effect that may take on someone versus if you're to ingest it through a drink or a cocktail of some sort.
Yeah, and I mean, Tony, like how nefarious too. If someone's at a party and there are drinks there, right or wrong, there's always kind of the risk that hey, if I have this drink, I guess something could have been put in that.
Mhm.
But baby oil, there's not the same risk that a victim might appreciate when they're going into an encounter like this, and so it's just an added layer of alleged deception, which I think is pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, if he already has people drugged from ingesting something through the drink, so then you add this on top of it. I mean, it takes all of this depravity to a whole new level. There's been so many cases that we've heard and allegations that have been made by alleged victims who say they just woke up and suddenly didn't know what was going on. Realized Diddy's right there, and various allegations have popped up that he's standing there. He's either engaging in something with them or with somebody else, and uh, lots of very crude things to be said in those moments through those allegations. It's just, I guess what's shocking to me is how long he likely was doing this sort of thing, and still no one has spoken up about any of it. Are you shocked by this at all? Now that we're seeing the volume of accusations that are coming in against Diddy, that there wasn't more leakage of this stuff. I know there's been little things kind of here and there, but like there's a lot of stuff. It's kind of shocking to see that none of this really kind of came out publicly over the last 3 decades.
Yeah, I think that the people who have knowledge, especially of the criminal conduct or alleged criminal conduct, I think they're scared. I think they don't want to come forward. I think the reason that some of them may have knowledge is because they observed it personally, and maybe they were there, and maybe they don't want to be associated with this. Probably the biggest scandal in the world. In the legal world right now. And so I'm just wondering if that is a part of the reluctance, not some, I don't want retaliation, but more, I don't want to be implicated.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. On that note, let's talk about implications of people being involved with Diddy, and what is that bar where they could be in trouble in some way, shape, or form, all the way down to something light to something of very serious repercussions for their actions of being complicit in some way, shape, or form of this. We're just hearing accusations right now, and these are accusations that a member of the group Jodeci was in the studio during one of Diddy's taking advantage of someone's sessions. I don't want to call it a freak off because it wasn't one of his big parties, but it was a time where he apparently, allegedly, violated a female in the studio. And this member of the group allegedly kind of standing there. The story goes he was kind of sitting against the wall, kind of waiting for it to get done. Something like that. I'm going to guess we're going to hear a lot of stories kind of along those lines. What does that mean for someone like that member of Jodeci or anyone who may have found themselves in a situation where Diddy went off the rails and did some crazy, horrible, illegal shit right in front of them?
In terms of how other people can be roped in, one of the biggest ways is through what's called accomplice liability. And so that's essentially where there was someone else there and they knew what was going on. They saw a person, perhaps a woman saying, no, don't, I don't want this, or something like that. And they just allowed it. And then also they provided some measure of aid or help or assistance in everything that's going on. If that's what happened, those folks could be roped in as accomplices and could be as criminally liable as Diddy. Another potential ground is if they tried to cover something up, if they were what's called an accessory after the fact, if they helped clean up materials that were involved in a crime, even something like that could bring in other folks who were present and who kind of knew what was going on and chose not to intervene and instead may have provided some level of assistance.
Is simply choosing not to intervene going to be a crime, going to be a problem for some people where literally, let's just say they're completely caught off guard. They didn't know any of this was going to happen. Suddenly he's doing something with someone they don't know. You don't I guess at that moment if somebody is objecting, you would know that this is not okay. But I mean, let's say they're not. Let's say they're there and they feel trapped as well and you don't know what the hell's going on. They walk out of the studio, they're done with that session. They just say to themselves, I don't want to work with him ever again. That was really uncomfortable. That was weird. Is that person going to be liable? Is that person going to be facing any consequences? Or is that essentially a witness at this point?
My thought is probably not. They probably would not be liable. Simply going to a place and observing some kind of impropriety and not doing anything else is likely not a criminal act. These folks may have just been caught up in, they thought they were going to a party
Mhm.
and all of a sudden some, foul shit is going down at this party. Doesn't mean that they have a legal duty to intervene usually. And so my guess is that they would just be characterized as witnesses.
What about the other individuals who may have some more knowledge here? Ones who maybe didn't necessarily see anything, but they knew what he was up to. They work with him enough. They hear information enough. I guess I would have to prove that they had that knowledge, but there's got to be a lot of people out there who did have some knowledge that knew some of the dark things that were going on behind the scenes, chose to walk away, chose to get out of those parties early for a reason. Um, what about that? I mean, is just having the knowledge that he's doing these things, but choosing to not associate with him, but he's doing horrible things, but you're not saying anything to stop it. What does that mean for individuals?
Generally speaking, I think it would be hard to criminally charge someone who just had knowledge and didn't take any further steps. Now, if they were an assistant and they engaged in recruiting these folks, if they engaged in obtaining supplies and materials for these events at which they had a reason to believe something criminal was going to happen, then we start to get a little bit closer to those folks being charged.
What did you make this week? Because there's been lots of rumblings of different celebrities having been involved with him in some way, shape, or form. Allegations were made on the Piers Morgan show by one of his guests this week against Jay Z and Beyonce, which was quickly met with the attorney for them speaking out saying, this is not true. This is false. This is. Your guest is saying these horrible things. Piers Morgan even issuing an apology for that guest. What did you make of the swift and very harsh response from their attorney. They've been very quiet through all of this, and I'm not in any way saying they have anything to do with Diddy. But obviously, there's rumors that are floating around out there, and they could just be that rumors. But it was a harsh response, a very loud response as well. When I would think maybe you want to lay low right now, not because you have anything to hide, but because you just don't want your name being strewn around in there. Is that the right response right now from celebrities who do get their name thrown into this arena to come back swiftly and harshly with a response the way that we saw from them?
And Tony, I'm sorry, you cut out when you mentioned the celebrity's name. I missed that.
It was Jay-Z and Beyonce that were brought up
Oh, gotcha.
in that Piers Morgan interview.
Yeah, they are about as high profile as you get. And so I can understand why they might want to distance themselves and just make abundantly clear from the outset
Mhm.
that they had no involvement. That being said, it is going to garner some attention their way.
Yeah.
It's probably going to garner some questions. And so they're sort of opening up a box in that sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a you can't win situation. I feel like for many people in general, get anything to do in that world whatsoever, and you are bringing any attention to yourself right now. It seems that questions will arise. I don't envy the situation that they're in right now. Let's talk about Diddy's mom and the letter that came out through Diddy's attorneys, which that in itself I found to be a bit interesting that it came through his attorneys and not through her own legal counsel of some sort. In it, I think the biggest thing that she says, other than give him his time in court, is it's a public lynching. Um, what is up with this statement? Why did the mom feel the need to make this statement right now? I'm wondering if the mom even really did make the statement, or if this is something that the Diddy PR team came up with and said, "You're saying this, mom." It's kind of sad. Nobody's coming your defense. You're literally you're walking your mom out there on stage with your attorneys to make some statement about what a good boy you are. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was a complete misfire. Look, hey, I completely understand a mom wanting to be protective of their son and make a statement publicly to that effect, but it certainly did not strike the right tone for most folks. And how much credibility do we want to give like a suspect's mother who's saying like he's a good dude? I just don't know that it really gets Diddy any traction. And there are also some statements in there about like some of Diddy's lies and stuff like that that could actually be used against him. So overall, I just thought it was a complete misfire.
Was I mean, and that's the scary part right now. He has some pretty, high profile, very, very well experienced attorneys on his team. What do you think happened behind the scenes there to get this thing issued through his attorneys? This wasn't like an Instagram video that he posts and then the attorneys are like, pull that down. It came through the office. I mean, ultimately, he is their client. Do you think this is something that the office said, hey, this is a good idea, let's do this? Or is this a Diddy said, you're going to do this because I'm paying you thing?
Yeah, I mean, coming through Diddy's attorneys gives the impression to some folks that it's kind of contrived, that this was sort of put together for some sort of strategic purpose, as opposed to the mom just coming out and sort of voicing her views independently. And so, with having the legal team behind it, it just seems a bit. Some people might interpret that as trying to pull the wool over their eyes, and maybe in not the most artful way.
Yeah, it was a bizarre move. I thought, wondering what else we're going to see here in the coming weeks or months. We can see his kids coming out and making some sort of statements. I mean, obviously, they are facing their own line of possible charges as well and civil allegations. Uh, right now, I would think the best bet for anyone in the Diddy immediate circle would it be just to shut up and stay silent at this moment in time.
My take is that they've got to do something. They've got to, the narrative is so overwhelmingly negative in the public consciousness regarding Diddy that they've got to do some things to counterbalance that. And they are. One thing they did recently was accuse the FBI of leaking the Cassie video,
Yeah,
and to try to kind of suggest that, hey, the FBI is being heavy-handed and treating them improperly. And so I think they're kind of grasping at straws for whatever they can do to add some kind of balance to this public narrative.
it seems that the narrative that Diddy thinks the public will accept, or what's being pushed out there, at least by his legal counsel, is not grounded in the reality that the rest of us live in. simply by, I mean, to argue that somehow the FBI leaked out that video to CNN as a way to garner sympathy, which is insane. I mean, feel bad for me, the abuser who's beating this woman, stomping on her head, pulling her down a hotel hallway, chucking a lamp at her. Oh, the FBI's got it out for me. They're trying to sway your opinion on me by releasing that video. On what planet does that garner sympathy?
Yeah, it doesn't land that way for me, certainly, but I think it's sort of part of this campaign that the Diddy folks have been on for a while, which is to show that the government has engaged in misconduct. You know, they sort of said that there was this military presentation during the raids that was inappropriate. The children were handcuffed. The government was heavy-handed. This is another example of that. But you know, the example they're using is a video of him beating the heck out of a woman.
That's where it doesn't make any sense. And yes, they did go in a military, so they didn't know what the hell to expect. They knew he was heavily armed at his place. They didn't know who was all in there. And if you look at the video, they handle it like they would handle any other major raid. Yes, the sons were brought out, handcuffed, hands above their head, and walked out of the property. No matter who was in there, they would have done that. No matter who it is they're going after, they would have done that. To say it was heavy-handed, I thought was, I mean, a bit, they're going to look for sympathy no matter what. Clearly, if they're trying to garner sympathy out of a video where he's literally beating a woman, it baffles the mind.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.